Well, I think if we look at civil society in Bhutan, I just did this. Sorry about the diagram, but not very good. But I wanted to capture what I thought. So earlier, I think it was very much mentioned by Amtashi that civil society is not something modern and thing. It was always there, where people kind of got together to foster their own interest and how they would help themselves, collectively. So from that perspective, I think it was. I did a small article in the Druk Journal about my perspective of civil society evolution in Bhutan. And as you know, in recent times, we are moving more towards what we call the formalized civil society, where you are required to have a board, you are required to have an office, which of course ultimately translates to operational cost, then core funding, then lack of funding, and all these type of things. I think, in a way, civil society, because of this evolution, it has given us this idea that to be an active member of the civil society, that you need money. I think sometimes you're getting into this area, and I think it's very good to hear about the Danish thing. For me, civil society is a space that is either provided or claimed. I think the aspect of this civil society, you want somebody to create the space for you to voice your concern and do something and demonstrate. But at the same time, I think if there's nobody listening, then you would claim that space. There are a lot of examples where this thing. So in Bhutan, I think we are kind of still, I would think that in the formalized kind of the CSO, we are kind of at this fledgling stage. A lot of the CSOs that I know of are struggling to really survive. They have good work to do, but they are constrained. So at the same time, we continue to have our traditional community-based organizations, back in the village, people who help themselves with maintaining their irrigation canal, organizing the village festival. These are all civil society. It can be an individual, it can be a group of individuals, in my opinion. And I think the formalized understanding about civil society, I think it's evolving. So I always had this question in my mind, civil society in Bhutan. Do we have a common understanding of what civil society is in Bhutan? When I say common, means to you, me, or to a bureaucrat, or a parliamentarian, or a person in the street, do we actually have a common understanding of what civil society is, how they contribute to nation building? So government, of course, if we think of the three spaces that we are talking about, the private sector, the government, and the civil society, we always very much agree. I think a lot of people would agree with these three spaces. But when it actually comes to understanding it, I was talking about this idea of claiming the space. Like, yes, everybody, let's consider ourselves in this room. We all have interests. Somebody likes to educate our Buddhist people about toilet. So somebody wants to talk about how to create space for people to share ideas. Somebody may be interested in music. That space you are providing, and it people with common interest, they come together and foster their own interest. But at the same time, if you look at Hong Kong for now, at the moment, they are claiming that space. You have an idea, I have my interest, and nobody is hearing me, and I'll claim that space. And therefore, people are going out, and that civil society is a movement of the citizens. So I think there are many ways in which civil society can manifest. You know. So the way I see what Bhutan wishes is not like you need people to come and claim, but let's hear you, create that space for people to voice your concern, or you have an idea that you want to demonstrate and contribute, yes, create that space. And I think that's what's desirable for us. Especially, I think it is important for us to have this common understanding of how we want to foster civil society in our country. Essentially, of course, freedom of speech and association, we want to do something, is there the space. Now, my view, I've come out of civil society, not that I don't associate with it, but I'm now an individual in the private sector doing consultancy and all that. But my view of civil society is that that space of participation of civil society is still limited, my own view. Yes, if you compare it to 20 years ago, it has progressed, no doubt about that. But the space seems limited for a number of reasons. One, of course, the civil society themselves, at the moment we are talking about 50. They are also not very well developed, or they don't have that capacity to really present what they want others to hear about. And from that point of view, it's more a capacity issue, especially management. Some don't even have a good board that functions. What is the relationship between the board and the secretariat? Those type of things, you just think you are a CSO, but actually you may be just wondering about, how to conduct the work of a CSO. Those type of things, I think that currently there are many, and therefore suddenly you feel so frustrated. I'm trying to do something good, but nobody really cares. Nobody supports. We have problems with core funding. We have only one staff. So those type of things I've seen are still challenges that our civil society is faced with. I mean, especially the organized civil society. In the villages, I don't think that they have any problem. Whenever it's the festival time, they come together. After the festival, okay, see you next year, There's no ED, no secretary, no core funds. Those type of things are very sustainable. But at the same time, there's the formalized type of thing where you need resources to sustain. So I wanted to make this point that we must have this common understanding about what CSOs, and I wanted to make this point especially based on my observation that to the government, because here we are talking about civil society mainly because we want the parliamentarians to hear about the good work that the civil society is doing. Do you hear us? Are you hearing us? Are you going to help us? Are you going to create that space so you can listen to us? Those type of things I think is the objective of such a forum. That's what I'm guessing. And therefore, I think we need to understand the importance of CSOs, not just for the government, but for us as citizens of this country, that we need the government, we need the civil society. Yes, civil society cannot believe like, okay, because we are civil society and we are doing good job, nobody should control us, nobody should tell anything to us, let us just do our... That doesn't work as well. The government has a check on civil society. But at the same time, in a democracy, the civil society, because it's essentially comprised of citizens, you create that platform for the civil society to check on the government as a watchdog. Because ultimately what we want in this country is about transparency, accountability, responsibility, duty, those type of things. So I think that understanding has to be kept such that we all can support each other. Government is important, civil society is important, the private sector is important. So especially, I think there are different, as I was mentioning, as citizens, we all have different needs and different aspirations. Some could even be about rights. It's my right, and nobody is really thinking, so I want to assert that. So it's essential to create that space to get a sense of what the citizens want. And to the CSOs, it's not like, okay, you're a civil society, so yeah, I acknowledge. But I think it's a matter of the constituency. Who are you representing? How many members do you have? If you ask, okay, this is a big, some CSOs are talking about, okay, this is a big issue and thing. Okay, where's the hard fact? Do you really represent 10,000 people? Their views? Is it really a big issue? That I thought is a little weak, in my opinion, in our current civil society. Maybe because it came out of somebody's hobby. I really feel passionate about this and I want to organize a, agency to take care of this and that. And therefore, there are, civil societies, at least I can tell that a lot of the 50 that we have in our country are faced with constraints of budget, operational cost, meeting rent, all that. And, to me, I begin to ask that, then why? If you are really trying to bring a public issue, aren't the people supporting it? Those type of questions I think we need to ask ourselves as a civil society, essentially saying that you need to build your constituency. First, you need to know what you are tackling is something that is significant in the society. Yes, if I started it, there will be 100,000 people who will support. Then there's no issue of sustainability. But often, people are not able to really bring up and make it understood to the citizens that I am here trying to create that platform for your voice, your problems. So often it's because we are not really garnering things. You just want to organize maybe an event and show to the thing, but do you have that constituency? I think that is the point I wanted to really bring up. What are you representing? So in terms of our population, how much? Maybe your membership is one way of telling that, yeah, if you have 3,000 people, for Bhutan size, I think 2,000-3,000 people as members is a significant group. So that's what I wanted to think. And then the other thing that I often hear about CSOs is that nobody is hearing us. We are doing so much, but nobody is hearing. So I'm saying, is what you are saying research-based? Do you have a scientific way of convincing others that, yes, this is a real issue? So if you don't, I think we need to enhance that. Essentially, you need to build that capacity such that you can bring it and convince through proper research and data. So the challenges, generally they group challenges in these categories. The regulatory environment. I think Henrik was mentioning about the evolution of the CSO authority, the CSO fund, and all that. And often some people say our CSO regulatory mechanism is a little restrictive. I don't know, but the good thing is we have given it a start. We can always review it and see. I think the question here is like, should you be concerned? Let's say if I'm a bureaucrat or somebody sitting in the parliament, should we be concerned about emergence of CSOs? I think this is a question that faces many people, because there are many examples elsewhere in the world where civil society has not, in many cases, been viewed as something that's beneficial because they demonstrate or they create chaos, and there are briefcase NGOs who, in the name of the people, they raise all sorts of issues and then use the money to pay themselves. Like if you look at the act, I was involved in drafting of the first regulations, and you will see that there is a provision for foreign CSOs. Now, these things didn't come from us. It came from outside. They're saying, oh yeah, you need to control CSOs because you don't want briefcase CSOs. We want genuine, who are really interested to foster and promote good for our society. And therefore, we're saying, okay, if they are really genuine and international, they must have at least $350,000. Otherwise, it's not a big... those type of things came from outside and got into our thing. It's advice. Be careful. Because, those type of things, I was involved, and therefore, I'm talking about the origin of some of the articles in the regulations. So these are more from concern. We wanted the civil society to be really the ones that are genuine. Okay. And then therefore, I think the measures, it's more like ease of registration. I mean, to me, that's what I'm thinking, You have 100 or 200 CSOs, I won't really be concerned, because I look at civil society more as the private sector. If you have enough products to sell and there are buyers, you survive. If not, you'll die a natural death. So for me, I was thinking it is not really a concern. The other one is the government. From the government side, the resources and fund. I feel that because the government wants to hear your concerns, the government is there to solve people's problems. And if you don't have a platform to hear the people's problems, I think it's also not a thing. I think it's important that the government create a CSO fund facility where at least you can have the platform to hear what the CSOs have to say. If we want CSOs to not claim the space, but to provide the space to hear, then they will, I think we don't have to claim. So that, from that point of view, I think if you're looking more from the happiness perspective, before you have all sorts of people who claim space, it's better you provide. And I think that would be one way to look at it. And then CSOs themselves, of course, they need to be strategic. Sometimes CSOs start and then you don't know whether you have even deviated from what you initially intended to be. So I think their consistency, then cost recovery and co-financing mechanisms, all these type of things, I think it's important for at least the formalized or registered CSOs. Then this channel of communication, I think participation in decision making. Yes, parliamentarians are there to make this decision. So I was saying, if we can really, like the CSO authority, I think already is there and maybe they are already organizing. I thought that one of the most important things is to provide that link between CSOs and the government. Ultimately, CSOs don't have all the money to do everything, but at the same time, the government doesn't. But those that need to be taken up by the government must hear, and therefore, if we can have that platform for the government to hear what the CSOs have to say. And CSOs, of course, you have to be more representative. Then, of course, I think sometimes CSOs are even looked upon as something very sensitive. Some of the things that you do, especially in our society, sometimes we like to say, like, well, yeah, that one we can't talk about is sensitive. In the name of sensitiveness, we restrain ourselves from progressing. So I think we need to really create that environment where we must hear. It doesn't matter what you're talking about, but if it's an issue, we must hear it so we can solve it, not avoid it, because I think, so this abating this fear and say, if I say this, maybe you don't, the government will not like, or if I said this, maybe the minister will not like it. You know, I think we have to move away from this feeling about the sensitivity and fear. So essentially, I think this is what I wanted to share based on my own experience, and now looking at CSO from a private sector perspective. Thank you.